Neal Coolong loves sports, in part because he loves being on this show. Can't blame him. Neal, welcome.
You know it. That is absolutely true. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here, and this is the best topic to discuss, in my opinion.
Yeah. So let's. The NFL schedule release is coming up. On a scale of 1 to 10, gauge your excitement.
It's funny. I literally just had this conversation with one of my writers and my boss. There's a reason the NFL is putting in the resources to make this a primetime event. And my useless 2 cents, I don't think it's something called for in the market. I do think it comes at a particular time in which the NFL has the opportunity to grasp as many headlines as it can at a time where, you've got playoffs in 2 other sports.
Right.
And the ratings of the NHL games that night, the NBA games that night, and the completely fabricated and orchestrated NFL schedule release is probably going to be on that same level.
It's unbelievable.
Except the funny thing is, this goes to show, just because they're watching it doesn't mean that it's good.
Right. I know.
It's like the Pro Bowl in the sense that everyone's going to complain about it, but they still watch it. So
Jack Ham and I laugh about the Pro Bowl ratings every year. And Jack always says the same thing. He says, "Steve, I can't believe this. It's nothing." I said, "I know, and people still watch."
Yeah, the Pro Bowl and the schedule release have one thing in common. Neither one of them are really about real football.
Right.
And it begs the question, is that really what fans want? Or is this just oversaturation within the market? And to be honest, I don't know. I think it could be either one. I think it could be both at the same time. Considering, I look at it from a business perspective. This is good for my product because it gives us something to discuss. But this is the conversation I had with my boss, this is what it was about. He wanted me to take him through what we do, like it was some big elaborate plan. I was like, you really got kind of 3 things to write about. You've got the schedule itself. Mm-hmm. Here are the games, here are the times. You're going to discuss probably the primetime games and rivalries, which are usually one and the same. They try to get as many rivalry games in primetime as they can.
Sure.
And from there, it's schedule predictions, which are the most inane, pointless, useless effort that we'll put forward throughout the year. And with all due respect to my staff, we're writers, we're bloggers. We do a lot of things that don't matter.
Right.
This is probably the top of that list. Most of the time, we have to factor it differently now. The inside joke always is every team always lands between 10-6 and 12-4.
Right.
And the ones at 12-4 are considered to be, reaching too much because of this game and that game that's going to be played in November, and who knows what the conditions are going to be like. And you start drumming up all these variables. It's like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah.
You have no way to really predict it. There is something to be said about coming close to hitting your prediction, but in the NFL, barring a complete collapse or a dramatic upswing that you wouldn't have anticipated, everyone's going to be probably within 2 games. Everyone reasonably probably has a good idea now what their team will be like.
It all depends.
But the schedule release gives us the chance to just kind of flesh all that out. And
it all depends on if you lose your quarterback. It all depends if you lose your quarterback.
There's that too.
If Denver loses Russell Wilson, who cares about the Christmas Day game against the Rams? I mean,
it really doesn't matter. So, it really doesn't matter to them. They don't even have a Drew Lock if Wilson goes down.
Exactly.
Or if something crazy happens, like your quarterback just signs an unofficial $375 million deal to be a broadcaster when he retires, and why that wasn't 30 seconds after he signed the contract is beyond me. I'm not sure what the deal is with that, but the fortune of your team is going to rise and fall based on your quarterback. That's the only thing that we can go on right now.
Well, the schedule release would be one thing if we only knew 6 opponents. The 6 teams in your 3 teams in your division twice. But we already know who the opponents are, and we even know who home and away. We just don't know what order. Okay.
This is how old I am now. I remember there was a time not that long ago where people didn't know the scheduling formula.
Right.
And that was a big post every year. This is probably 15 years ago, I want to say.
Right.
Maybe 20, closer to that.
You see, we had it because it was in the NFL Media Guide. That's why we knew it. I mean, we knew it because we had the NFL Media Guide. Yeah.
Right. So you'd actually have to go to reporters to know who they were going to play. Right. And some people didn't care that much about it, but those, 10 seconds before it was revealed was a lot of fun. The anticipation of that was really cool. It's like, oh, wow, we're going to play the Panthers this year or somebody.
Right.
The order of it, if you think about it, it's completely arbitrary, except for the exercise of adding a billion variables that there's no possible way you can predict, up to and including the weather in November of how that's going to impact the game. But you're right. We know everything there is to know except for the order. And by and large, I think you can probably kind of, guess if you really needed to. One thing we know, the Steelers are going to be on the road in week 1. That's a Pirates thing from what I've gathered, just because it used to be, 1 year, 2 years in a row, then 3 years in a row. You're kind of like, are you ever going to play at home? And then 4 years in a row, you're claiming conspiracy. Now that it's about to be 8, it's like, okay, something else is going on. I mean, it's fairly obvious this is something the Steelers are okay with. I don't know what the other side of the quid pro quo is, but they're getting something in exchange for it, I'm sure. But they'll probably they usually play the Browns in week 1. How that works, I don't know, but it wouldn't be a surprise if they're in the division again. Otherwise, oftentimes they're in prime time. So it's kind of like, pick out the teams from this that meet those descriptions. And if you want to really reverse engineer the whole thing, you can, but it's the most pointless exercise in my calendar every year. I enjoy it just because it's funny to me more than anything. And it's a point where you have to start memorizing the schedule, which feels like real work again.
All right, so the big story of the day in the NFL is not the schedule release. It is the 10-year, $375 million deal that Lachlan Murdoch and Fox will give Tom Brady once he actually does retire to be with Kevin Burkhardt in the Fox booth. Nobody is surprised that Tom Brady is going into broadcasting when he's done, and who knows when that is. But it is the magnitude of this deal, which is some good. What did you think when you not just heard he was about the deal, but the size of the deal?
I saw the money, and in all honesty, it's more like, okay, this is like a full entire Fox network kind of deal. There's no way you can give that kind of money to a color broadcaster. You can't. There's no way that it generates that level of revenue. So you've got to get 365 days out of this. Without knowing what the specific details are.
I mean, he's going to have to make
almost twice of market.
He'll have to make appearances on Fox Business to go with
he's
Fox
host
News.
The show. I mean, there's no other way.
Exactly.
You're not making hay with that. Even also consider too. Here's the big thing. He's definitely not retiring this year. It is next to impossible for me to believe that he's retiring after this season. Right. There's no way. They're not going to call it that. They're going to let him retire on his own, kind of like he did the last time, sort of. Right. He's going to be in the booth next year. And over this year, I'm sure they're going to try to, get the time that they can to work with him and figure out how he can be Tony Romo without getting into what I feel to be the disastrous Drew Brees. You get somebody that can really draw in a significant audience, but you, as a network, you've got to use him in a bunch of different ways. And I think there are, some pretty obvious connections between Tom Brady and Fox News. So maybe that's something they're looking to do. They're just not going to get into it now because of how divisive that topic is going to be. It's nuts because, in all honesty, what I'm thinking of now is this is a full-on consistent story. Who's next? In my line of work, that's what you have to ask. who's going to move toward that now. Do you remember? It wasn't that long ago that they put Jason Witten on Monday Night Football.
I know.
And after one broadcast with Jason Witten, I wouldn't have paid $18 an hour to have him on the air.
Exactly.
The amount of money now that they're spending for the next, what they think the next Tony Romo, what are they offering Peyton Manning that he's turning down? Because there's no way that Peyton Manning is not on that same level. Peyton Manning is excellent on TV. He's very funny. He's very conversational.
He's excellent, it seems, in everything he does. Commercials, the Manning cast, as a player, I mean, business sense.
Yeah, it's a rough life to be blessed with that much. He's able to easily make more money than he did as an NFL player. You got to think that the Manning cast, which is it's genius, not in the sense that it was created recently. This idea is not complex. It's not challenging. It's not difficult. It's a matter of the NFL allowing it, and they needed to have the right people in there. And Peyton and Eli are perfect for it. You're going to get, I don't want to say off color, but you're going to get maybe more into closer to an R-rated type of thing than you will on your PG-rated broadcast. But it's safe. They're going to kind of follow in line with what the league would want them to do. They're not going to have too many beers while they're on the air. But it's excellent. And to be honest with you, if I'm watching, I don't know, I'm picking two teams at random, not to insult anybody, but if I'm watching a Colts and Jaguars game, I'd much rather watch Peyton and Eli just kind of kicking around what's going on, telling stories, busting jokes on each other. I'd much prefer that than an overly serious play-by-play and color broadcast of your typical NFL game that fans out of market probably don't even really want to watch all that much. It's a genius idea, and if they're going to give Brady that much money to be the play-by-play guy, it doesn't really seem like Fox is all that interested in creating their own version of it, which is too bad. I think they all should.
Well, if it's the Jaguars, the off-base commentary, I mean, you have to give them credit. The Jaguars would give them a lot of material to work with.
It writes itself. I mean, it's the easiest thing in the world. No, they would have avoided it last year. They probably many in the league that saw the disaster that was the Urban Meyer reign of terror in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But now you get 17 games to haul off on that if you wanted to, and the NFL would do well to make more effort, like with the Manning cast, to their credit, to take their product maybe a little less seriously. I get the fuel of the NFL, and I've felt this for a long time, is the perfectly balanced schedule. Getting back to the schedule topic, it creates enough drama and enough excitement and enough emphasis on one game. Whereas it's to the point of the NHL and the NBA, we didn't even really care about the first round of the playoffs. It doesn't matter at all. The NFL is bigger in the regular season on a game-by-game basis. And the more they can do, not to deflate that, but maybe offer a different option to a younger crowd that they're used to humor being injected in this. The lighter side of it. They're commenting on it. They're weighing in on not just the play on the court, the field, the rink, but the broadcasters, the flubs that they'll have. They're instant, hot news the second that it happens. I think embracing that and trying to poke a little fun at itself, not in a way that makes it look really bad, but have a sense of humor about what you're doing. Embrace the humanity of this. All they have right now is Roger Goodell's classic staple of trying to antagonize the crowd when they're booing him when he's up on stage during the draft. And that got old the first time he did it. He's not even close to charismatic enough to pull that off. But there are plenty of players with a high level of charisma who are very funny that might not be able to do the serious thing very well. But when you give them a personality, they can run with it. And, I think to some degree, Tom Brady can be seen as that, and Peyton Manning absolutely can be seen as that.
Always a pleasure, sir. Thanks so much. Look forward to every Tuesday.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.